3 days before Christmas, I was sitting in my small, cold apartment wrapped in a blanket when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a group text from my mother, Penelope. I picked it up, expecting a reminder about which dish to bring to the family's gala dinner. Instead, the message was cold, direct, and final. "We've come to an agreement. It's better if you don't come to the gala this year. Declan is uncomfortable with your attitude." Seconds later, a notification popped up. My sister, Layla, had liked the message. I stared at the screen, waiting for the pain to hit, waiting for the tears to sting my eyes, but they didn't come. I didn't cry, I didn't ask why. I just felt a strange, cold clarity wash over me. I typed a single reply. "Perfect. You won't be seeing me again either." Then I looked up at Silas, who was sitting across from me, watching me with that silent intensity of his. He nodded once. "It begins." I left the phone on the warm coffee table, the message still glowing on the screen. Silas leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his eyes locked on mine. He didn't offer empty platitudes or tell me that family is everything. He didn't tell me to be the bigger person. He just said 2 words in a low, steady voice. "It's time." I looked at him. I really looked at him. To my family, Silas was just the quiet guy who drove an old sedan and never had much to say at dinners. They saw a nobody. I saw the man who had held me while I shook from nightmares about Declan. I saw the man who had silently, methodically helped me build a fortress around my life while they were busy trying to tear it down. I stood, the blanket pooling at my feet. I walked to the closet and pulled out the garment bag I'd hidden in the back 3 months ago. I didn't reach for a suitcase. I wasn't packing to leave town. I was dressing for war. I unzipped the bag. The dress was sleek, professional, a deep emerald green that made me look like I owned the room, not like I was apologizing for being in it. Silas went into the bedroom and came out in a suit that looked deceptively simple, but I knew better. It was perfectly tailored from a dark, expensive fabric. He put on his glasses, the ones he only wore when he was negotiating a contract, and suddenly the quiet boyfriend was gone. In his place was someone dangerous. We didn't say a word as we got ready. The silence wasn't heavy. It was focused. It was the silence of soldiers checking their weapons before a battle. As we drove towards the Henderson estate, the city lights blurring past us, my mind wandered. I thought about why. Why had they chosen Declan? Why had my parents looked at the man who left bruises on my arms and seen a son, while they looked at me and saw a problem? I remembered the night I came home with a black eye, stumbling into the kitchen, begging for help. My mother had looked at me, not with horror, but with annoyance. She told me I must have provoked him. She told me Declan was under a lot of stress as a CEO, that I needed to be more understanding. Back then, I thought they were blind. I thought if I just explained it better, if I just showed them the pain, they would wake up. But as I watched the familiar road wind up to the mansion, I finally let myself see the truth. They weren't blind. They were bought. To accept that Declan was a monster would mean accepting they had sold their daughter for security. It would mean facing the fact that their comfortable life, their status, their freedom was paid for with my pain. The human mind is a master of survival. When faced with a truth too ugly to bear, it rewrites reality. My parents didn't want to be monsters, so they made me the villain. In their story, Eliana is the problem and Declan is the provider. It was easier to sacrifice my sanity than their lifestyle, and that realization no longer made me sad. It made me furious. It made my blood run hot and fast. I looked at Silas, his hand resting on the gear shift, steady and calm. We weren't going to beg for a seat at their table tonight. We were going to foreclose on it. We pulled up to the iron gates of the Henderson estate, the gravel crunching under the tires of Silas's modest sedan. To anyone else, this place looked like a dream. The sprawling colonial-style mansion was bathed in a warm, golden light, with elegant wreaths on every window and a Christmas tree that soared 2 stories high in the foyer. The driveway was a parade of luxury SUVs and German sports cars, a testament to the family's supposed success. But as I looked at the pristine white columns, I didn't see a home. I saw a shell corporation. I saw a monument built on tax evasion and predatory loans, a beautiful facade hiding a rotten structure that was about to collapse. We walked up the steps, the cold night air biting at my cheeks. I could hear the murmur of conversation and the gentle clinking of crystal from inside. I didn't knock. I opened the door and walked into the warmth. The conversation died instantly. It was like someone had cut the power. The string quartet in the corner stuttered to a halt mid-note. 50 heads turned. Cousins, business partners, neighbors, people who had spent years hearing stories about how unstable and difficult I was. They stared at me like I was a ghost. My mother, Penelope, was the first to move. She didn't rush to hug me. She stalked toward us, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble floor. Her face was a mask of terrified fury. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin through my sleeve, and hissed in a voice low enough not to disturb the benefactors, but loud enough to wound. "What are you doing here? We told you to stay away. And why did you bring this?" She threw a look of pure, unadulterated disdain at Silas. To her, in his conventional suit and quiet demeanor, he was nothing, a stain on her tapestry. She looked at him like he was staff, like he should have used the service entrance. Before I could answer, the crowd parted. Declan emerged. He looked impeccable. I had to give him that. He was wearing a tuxedo that cost more than my first car, holding a glass of amber-colored whiskey in one hand. He moved with the easy, predatory grace of a man who has never been told no. He didn't look angry. He looked amused. He walked right up to us, ignoring me completely, and stopped in front of Silas. "You must be the driver," Declan said, his voice loud enough for the whole room to hear. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled $20 bill, and tucked it into Silas's breast pocket. "Why don't you be a good lad and move your car around back? You're blocking the view of the Porsches." My father, Elias, walked up behind him and let out a booming laugh. He clapped Declan on the shoulder, looking at him with a pride he had never once shown me. "Well said, son," Elias said. "Good help is so hard to find these days." The room rippled with polite, cruel laughter. My sister Layla was smirking behind her champagne flute. I felt the heat rise in my chest, the old instinct to shrink, to apologize, to run. But then I looked at Silas. He didn't flinch. He didn't get angry. He glanced down at the $20 bill. Then he looked up at Declan and gave him a small, polite smile. It was the smile of a wolf watching a sheep explain why it shouldn't be dinner. "I'll keep this safe," Silas said softly. My mother led us to a corner table, far from the center of the room, treating us like a shameful stain she couldn't wipe away. She thought she was putting us in our place. She didn't realize she was locking herself in a cage with the only people who held the key. They thought they were royalty, presiding over their court. They didn't know they were already subjects in a kingdom that had been conquered yesterday morning. Dinner was served. White-gloved waiters moved like ghosts, placing plates of filet mignon in front of people who had sold their souls to afford it. I didn't eat. I watched. I watched my father, Elias, stand and tap a silver spoon against his crystal glass. The sharp sound cut through the room's murmur. The conversation died. He looked around him like a king surveying a kingdom that was already burning. Only he couldn't smell the smoke yet. He raised his glass to Declan. "To the man of the hour. To Declan," Elias boomed, his voice thick with unearned pride. "The son I never had." He paused for the polite laughter that followed. It was dutiful and hollow. Then his eyes found me in the back corner. There was no love in them, only a challenge. "You know," he continued, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper, "in this life, some children drain you. They take and they take until there's nothing left. And others lift you up. They step up. They save you. We are blessed, truly blessed, to have Declan at the helm of this ship." The applause was thunderous. Declan didn't look humbled. He looked like a cat who had just swallowed a canary and was waiting for dessert. He leaned back, one arm draped over the back of his chair, basking in it. He smiled at my father, a conspiratorial grin that said, "We own this world." He thought he had won. He thought this public adoration was the final nail in my coffin. He thought I would shrink in shame at the comparison, crushed by the weight of their disapproval. But I wasn't shrinking. I was calculating. I remembered every time my father had compared us. "Why can't you be more like Declan?" Declan knows how to handle people. Declan is a leader. They had worshipped the hand that hit me because it also fed them. They had traded my safety for their silence. They broke me then, chipping away my voice piece by piece. But tonight, I had found it again, and it was sharper than steel. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the marble floor. The sound cut through the applause like a gunshot. Heads turned. My mother's eyes widened in warning, her mouth forming a silent, "Sit down." I didn't sit. I projected my voice to the back of the room. "Is he the savior because he paid off your debts, Dad?" I asked. My tone was casual, deadly calm. "Or is he the savior because he knows about the tax fraud?" The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. It was the sound of 100 people holding their breath at once. My father's face went from flushed to pale in an instant. The wine glass in his hand trembled, sending a ripple of red liquid dangerously close to the rim. Then the gas lighting began. It was almost impressive how quickly they switched tactics. It was a reflex, a defense mechanism honed over decades. My mother shot to her feet, throwing her napkin down. "She's unstable!" Penelope cried, her voice high with panic. She turned to the guests, waving her hands, pleading with them to ignore me. "This is why we didn't invite her. She's having an episode. She's imagining things." My sister Layla chimed in, sneering from across the room. "God, Eliana, you're making a fool of yourself. Sit down or get out. You're ruining everything." They were good at this. For years, they had made me question my own reality. They had made me think the bruises were my fault, the insults were jokes, the neglect was love. But I didn't believe their version of reality anymore. I had the receipts. Declan stood. He didn't look amused anymore. The mask of the benevolent sun slipped, revealing the predator beneath. He walked toward our table with slow, deliberate movements. He was trying to intimidate me. He was trying to make me feel small. "You're making a scene, Eliana," Declan said, his voice low and dangerous. He stopped a few feet away, looming over me, blocking out the light. "Maybe you need another lesson in respect. Maybe you need to be reminded of your place." He raised a hand. It was subtle, just a slight shift in his shoulder. But I knew what it meant. I knew the weight of that hand, knew the pain it promised. But he forgot one thing. I wasn't alone in the dark anymore. Declan snapped his fingers, a sharp, imperious sound that echoed in the silence. 2 security guards, burly men in ill-fitting suits who had been loitering by the entrance, stepped forward. "Get them out," Declan commanded without even looking at them, his eyes fixed on me, cold and dead. "And if she resists, drag her." That was the moment the atmosphere in the room shifted. It wasn't me who moved. It was Silas. He didn't lunge. He didn't shout. He simply stepped between Declan and me. It was a smooth, practiced motion, like a door slamming shut on a draft. He reached into his suit pocket, the same pocket Declan had stuffed the $20 bill into, and pulled out a pair of thin-framed glasses. He put them on. It was a small gesture, but the transformation was absolute. The quiet, unassuming driver vanished. In his place was a man who looked like he could buy and sell everyone in this room before breakfast. The security guard tried to grab my arm. Silas didn't even look at him. He just held up a hand, palm out, without turning his head. "Touch her," Silas said, his voice dropping an octave, soft and heavy as lead, and you'll be facing assault charges before your next paycheck clears, assuming, of course, the checks don't bounce." The guard froze. Declan blinked, his smirk faltering for a fraction of a second. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Declan spat. "You're the help. Know your place." "My place?" Silas smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a shark in a goldfish pond. He opened the leather briefcase that had gone unnoticed beside his chair. "I'm not her driver," Silas said, his enunciation crisp, cutting through the air. "I'm Silas Bands, senior partner at Sterling and Bands. We specialize in high-risk corporate liquidation and distressed asset acquisition." A gasp went through the room. Even the cousins in the back knew that name. Sterling and Bands didn't handle traffic tickets. They dismantled corporations. Declan stared at the card, the color draining from his face. "And right now," Silas continued, "I am acting as legal representative for the sole preferred creditor of the property on which you are currently standing." "Creditor," my father stammered, getting up so fast his chair toppled over. "What are you talking about? I own this house. I built this estate." "No, Dad," I said. I reached into my purse and pulled out the file, the thick red folder I had carried with me like a shield. I threw it on the table. It landed with a heavy, satisfying thud right next of the main course. "You don't own it. You hid it." I looked around at the guests, raising my voice so every benefactor and neighbor could hear. My parents created a shell company, an LLC, to hide this mansion from the IRS. They thought they were clever. But to maintain this lifestyle, to keep buying the cars and throwing these parties, they needed cash. So they took out under-the-table loans with sky-high predatory interest rates. I looked at Declan. Loans he arranged for them. Declan looked like he was going to be sick. He knew exactly what was in that folder. "They defaulted 3 months ago," I said, my voice steady and cold. "The bank was about to foreclose quietly. They didn't want the scandal. So yesterday morning, I made a call. I bought the note. I bought the debt." "You can't do that," my mother whispered, her hands trembling. "You don't have that kind of money." "I do now," I said. "And because you signed a commercial loan agreement for your little shell company, you agreed to an immediate foreclosure clause." I pointed to the document on top of the pile. "You know what that means, Elias? It means you waived your right to a trial. It means the second you defaulted, the lender, which is me, could seize the assets without a judge, without a hearing, and without notice." I leaned over the table, placing my hands flat on the wood, looking my father dead in the eye. "I own the debt, I own the LLC, and I own the chair you're sitting in." Declan laughed. It wasn't a nervous laugh. It was a wet, ugly sound that bubbled up from his chest, shattering the tension in the room like a dropped plate. He shook his head, looking from the file I'd thrown down to me, a pitying smirk on his face. He wasn't beaten. He was just getting started. "That's very clever, Eliana," Declan said, picking up his whiskey again. He took a slow sip, his eyes never leaving mine. "Buy the debt. Seize the company. Very dramatic. But you forgot one thing. You forgot why your parents let me in that door in the first place." He reached into his tuxedo jacket. For a second, everyone in the room flinched, expecting a weapon, but he just pulled out a USB drive. He held it up, letting it catch the light from the chandelier. Declan's voice dropped low but audible. "You kick us out, and I send this drive to the IRS, the DA's office, and every news station in the country." My mother sobbed. My father was frozen. "Your parents didn't just hide the house," he continued. "They hid millions of dollars in income. Money laundering, wire fraud, tax evasion. Layla signed the checks. If I go down, all of them go to federal prison." He stepped closer. "So you call the cops, you kick us out, but you'll be the daughter who put her parents behind bars." The room was silent. My parents looked at me, pleading. I smiled. I was counting on it. Declan's brow furrowed. "I needed you to threaten me out loud in front of witnesses, to admit that you are extorting my family." I nodded at Silas. He produced a blue-back document. Exhibit B, the will of Eleanor Henderson. She died broke, my father stammered. No, I said. She died smart. Silas read, a $10 million estate placed in a protective trust to be released only upon irrefutable proof of Eliana's immediate family conspiring to extort or endanger her for financial gain. Declan stood motionless. My grandmother didn't leave me broke, I said. She left me a trap. I pointed to the blinking red light on Silas's lapel. We've been recording since we walked in. You just confessed to tax fraud and extortion. I stepped closer. You didn't outplay me. You just unlocked my inheritance. His face crumbled. Now I can fix the tax problem, I added, or let you all rot. My mother ran to me, desperate. We did it to protect the family. You have the money now. We can fix this. I looked at her calmly. You didn't protect the family. You protected your comfort. You sold me for a little peace and quiet. I turned to the security. I own the company that pays you. These people are trespassing. Get them out. Silas nodded. The guards moved. Declan lunged for me. Silas caught his wrist and dropped him to his knees. Get them out. Now. They were dragged out into the snow, dressed for a party that was over forever. Merry Christmas, I said, and I closed the door. The mansion was silent, clean, empty. Silas let out a breath. So you own a mansion now? No, I said, tossing an old family photo into the fireplace. I own my freedom. Later, I opened my laptop. Copies of all the records were already there. Silas hesitated. You've already won. You don't have to do it. Winning isn't getting away, I said. It's making sure they can never do this again. I clicked send. Then we went home to a small, warm apartment paid for with honest money. My inheritance wasn't $10 million. It was the ability to walk away and never look back. If you've ever had to burn a bridge to save yourself, you'll understand.